XRP is not normal, not coincidental, and not being discussed honestly anywhere else. And if you blink, you will miss what could be the most violent repricing event this market has ever seen, because today everything is hitting at once and the timing is absolutely terrifying. I need you to understand something immediately. This is not just another XRP update. This is the convergence moment, the kind of moment that only happens once per cycle, where regulatory pressure, institutional positioning, liquidity stress, and narrative collapse all collide. And when that happens, wealth does not move slowly, it snaps. Ask yourself this extreme question right now. Why are BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan-linked entities, and IMF-adjacent policy groups all suddenly talking about tokenization, real-world assets, and compliant blockchain rails at the exact same time the SEC is losing narrative control? Ripple is expanding silently, and XRP liquidity corridors are lighting up globally. WTF is really going on here? The mainstream will tell you nothing is happening, that XRP is boring, that the case is old news, but behind closed doors, the conversation has shifted from if to when, and when is coming faster than anyone is prepared for. This channel exists because most people will never see this setup until price exposes it. And by then, it will be too late to position intelligently. If you value information that cuts through the noise and you want to stay ahead of the herd before headlines flip, make sure you lock in right now by subscribing and turning on notifications, because the next moves will not wait for consensus and you do not want to hear about them after the fact. What makes today urgent is not one single announcement. It is the stacking effect. Regulatory chess moves, institutional silence that speaks louder than press releases, and market structure that is tightening like a coiled spring, all while retail attention is deliberately distracted elsewhere. This is how every major transfer of value begins, quietly, confusingly, and aggressively denied until price forces belief. Ripple did not survive years of regulatory warfare with the SEC just to fade into irrelevance, and XRP was not stress-tested across jurisdictions, payment rails, and liquidity environments for fun. Something is being prepared, and the signals are no longer subtle. The question is not whether XRP will move. The question is who will still be paying attention when it does. What separates speculation from inevitability is data, authority, and silence from the people who usually never stay quiet. And this is where things get uncomfortable for anyone still dismissing XRP as yesterday's story. Look at what is happening beneath the surface while headlines chase memes and distractions, because the institutions that actually move markets are positioning around infrastructure, not hype. The IMF has openly discussed interoperable payment systems and cross-border liquidity frameworks. BIS papers keep circling back to tokenized settlement layers, and the World Economic Forum continues to parade panels on compliant digital assets. Yet somehow Ripple's name keeps appearing in the background conversations while XRP liquidity quietly expands in regions most retail traders never watch. Ask yourself this brutally honest question. If XRP were truly irrelevant, why did the SEC spend years trying to cage it instead of ignoring it like thousands of other tokens? Why did former SEC officials contradict each other publicly while Ripple kept building corridors across Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America? Why are banks experimenting with on-demand liquidity models at the exact moment traditional correspondent banking is cracking under cost and speed pressure? This is not theory. This is structural stress, and XRP was designed for exactly this environment. BlackRock does not talk publicly until positioning is complete. Fidelity does not research tokenization without intent, and JP Morgan does not explore blockchain settlement while pretending it is all a joke. And yet all roads keep pointing back to regulated rails, instant settlement, and assets that survived regulatory fire. Prepare for shock, because the data does not scream, it whispers, and only insiders listen to whispers. XRP volume patterns are changing, liquidity pools are deepening, and volatility compression is reaching historically violent levels, the kind that precedes expansion that makes charts look fake in hindsight. Meanwhile, public-facing narratives remain dismissive, which is precisely how smart money prefers it. This is how authority operates, quietly aligning policy language, technical standards, and institutional comfort before the switch is flipped. The retail crowd waits for permission from headlines, insiders watch for alignment, and right now, alignment is everywhere you look if you know what matters. This changes everything because once authority signals legitimacy, price is no longer driven by belief. It is driven by necessity. Now comes the part where weak hands are engineered out of position because no major repricing happens without fear, ridicule, and deliberate confusion, and XRP has been the perfect psychological battlefield for years. The catalyst phase never announces itself cleanly. It arrives disguised as noise, lawsuits, delays, and fake disappointment, and yet behind the scenes, the machine keeps moving. Every time XRP is declared dead, another corridor opens, another partnership expands, another regulatory domino shifts quietly into place. This is why FUD around XRP is so aggressive and so repetitive, because it is not meant to inform you. It is meant to exhaust you until you disengage right before the move. Ask yourself why the same tired arguments are recycled endlessly while nothing fundamentally breaks. Why influencers suddenly go silent when positive developments stack. Why timelines are flooded with distractions whenever Ripple secures another foothold. This is not organic skepticism. This is narrative management. The real catalyst is not one announcement. It is the moment when liquidity demand collides with regulatory clarity, and there is no alternative rail ready at scale. When banks, payment providers, and even government-linked institutions need speed, cost efficiency, and compliance at the same time, they do not experiment. They deploy what already works. XRP has already been battle-tested under the harshest conditions imaginable, while others are still theoretical. The SEC fight did not weaken XRP, it hardened it. And now that clarity is emerging, the same voices that screamed collapse will pivot to late-stage enthusiasm. WTF do you think happens to price when suppressed demand meets forced utility? This is the part where patience becomes a weapon and emotional traders donate positions to institutions who understand cycles. The catalyst will feel underwhelming in the moment and explosive in hindsight, and by the time the mainstream asks why XRP is moving, positioning will already be done. The goal of FUD is to make you doubt your own eyes while the setup completes. But history shows that assets that survive coordinated suppression do not drift sideways forever. They snap violently when pressure is released. This is where numbers stop sounding crazy and start sounding inevitable, and where people who laughed at price targets suddenly pretend they always believed, because price is not about hope, it is about mechanics. When you understand supply, liquidity demand, and velocity, the current XRP price looks less like reality and more like a placeholder. There is a finite supply, a shrinking liquid float, and a growing need for instant settlement as global payment systems strain under inflation, debt, and geopolitical fragmentation. If XRP is used even marginally as a bridge asset at scale, price does not inch upward, it must expand to handle volume without breaking the system. This is basic math that most refuse to confront. Ask yourself how trillions in cross-border value can move efficiently through an asset priced like a speculative toy. It cannot. Price appreciation is not a reward, it is a requirement. This is why extreme targets exist, not because of fantasy, but because utility demands it. Institutions do not need XRP to be cheap, they need it to be functional, liquid, and stable at higher valuations. The final warning is simple and brutal. The longer price stays suppressed, the more violent the adjustment becomes. History is ruthless with people who confuse boredom with safety. Once the narrative flips, once authority signals are undeniable, once liquidity stress forces deployment, there will be no polite entry, no slow climb, and no mercy for hesitation. This is the stage where complacency is punished and preparation is rewarded, because markets do not wait for consensus, they move when positioning is complete. If you are still debating whether XRP matters while global financial plumbing is being rebuilt in real time, you are already late mentally, even if price has not reflected it yet. This is the calm before the snap, the silence before disbelief turns into panic buying, and the last moment where attention is optional. Respected viewers, this is the moment where everything you have heard clicks into place, because markets do not send invitations, they send shocks, and XRP is standing at the epicenter of one. What you are witnessing right now is not noise. It is the final compression before expansion, the point where years of suppression, ridicule, and regulatory warfare converge into a single outcome that most people will only understand after price forces the conversation. The insiders are calm, the headlines are quiet, and the structure is tight, which is exactly how every major transfer of value begins. When the switch flips, it will not be announced on social media first. It will show up on the chart, and by the time analysts scramble to justify it, the move will already be history. This is not a promise. It is a pattern, repeated across every cycle where infrastructure assets are ignored until they become unavoidable. The final question you must ask yourself is brutally simple. Will you be positioned before necessity takes over, or will you wait for permission from a media system that has been wrong at every major inflection point? If this information resonates and you want to stay ahead of what is coming instead of reacting to it, make sure you are subscribed, engaged, and paying attention, because the next phase will not be slow, it will not be forgiving, and it will not care about disbelief. XRP does not need hype, it needs deployment. And deployment is exactly what the world is moving toward, whether the public is ready or not. The people who understand this now will sound crazy until they sound early, and by then the window will have closed.